In this video, we'll be learning about the operators that lets us create a mono publisher. So let's just get started with it. The first operator that we see here is MonoJust. We have already used this operator in the previous video. So this is a static operator that has been provided by the mono class, to which we can pass the data. It can be the data of a generic type. It can be integer, double, string, whatever it is, and it will return us the publisher which emits that data. Okay, so let's just view in code how to create one. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just create a test mono creators test, and we'll write the test, maybe let's call it just, and let's create a string publisher. Okay, I'll call it MonoDoj, and we'll pass in the data. Okay, and we just have to import this. Okay, and now let me just disable Copilot for now. So I'll do subscribe, and this is the on next signal receiver. Sorry. So on next, right, then we got the error one. On error is this. Then we got the on complete one. Okay, so now if we run this, this particular thing will actually return us this publisher, and we should get on next the data and then the on complete signal. Let's see if we get that. And yes, we are getting that. So yeah, in this way we can create a mono publisher with the use of the just operator. Now if you just make it some other data type, right, like integer, and if you want to start publishing integer values, you can do that as well. So it's generic basically. Yeah, so this is how MonoDoj operator works, pretty straightforward. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is MonoDiffer. So we'll just directly go through the code, how this operator, what all this operator expects as an argument, and how it works. Okay, and then we'll talk more about it. So I'll just copy this test. Let's have it here. Let's call it differ. Okay, and we'll just create a publisher with the use of the differ method. Okay, mono.differ. So if we see, right, it's expecting a supplier. Okay, which extends mono, extends integer. So we have to give a lambda function which returns a mono like this. Okay, now if we run this, right, we got a publisher and it emitted the value as 5 and then the on complete signal. But if we see, right, the syntax, to mono.differ we have to pass a lambda function which returns a mono publisher. Okay, then why is this needed, right? I could have just directly used MonoJust. Why would I do this? Why would I write mono.differ and then pass a lambda function which returns a mono publisher? So basically there is a difference between how MonoJust works and how mono.differ works. MonoJust basically does something known as eager evaluation. Okay, and differ, it does lazy evaluation. What that means is MonoDoj does the evaluation of the value to be emitted at the time of creation, and MonoDiffer does the evaluation of the value to be emitted at the time of subscription. Uh, Now we'll just showcase you what that means. What I'll do is I'll create a mono which returns a date. Okay, and then what I'll do, we'll subscribe to it, then we'll sleep for some time, 5 seconds maybe. Okay, and then again we'll subscribe to it. Okay, let me just add this exception. Now if we run this, let's see what we get. Yeah, so we got, as you can see, right, we got the same date in both the onyx signal output, right? Even though there is a sleep time of 5 seconds, but we still got the same date, 9:22:41. Okay, now if I do the same thing for differ, what happens? Let's see. So okay, let it return a mono, sorry, a date, and this is returning the date. And but let's do the same thing. I'll just copy this and have it over here. Okay, and let me add that exception method. Okay, so what did we do? We did the same thing. This is a differ which is now emitting a date value, and then we subscribe to it at first, then we slept for some time, and then we subscribe to it again. Okay, now if we run this, let's see what do we get. Yeah, so as you can see, right, we are getting a different date value. Here it is 9:23:58, here it is 9:24:03. So there is a difference between the value that was emitted by the publisher on every subscribe, right? So this is what explains what I said earlier. Here the evaluation of the value is happening at the time of subscription, whereas in case of MonoJust, the evaluation of the value happens at the time of creation. So when we created this publisher, the evaluation had already happened, and no matter how many times or when you subscribe to it, it will always return the fixed value. Whereas in case of differ, it will return a dynamic value, a different value on every subscribe. Okay, given that the logic is such that it must be returning a different value. In this case, new date is a dynamic thing, it changes with time, and hence in this case we got a different value. So if it is a dynamic value which is going to get changed over time or due to some other factors, then you must be using MonoDiffer and not MonoJust. Okay, so that's the difference between the just operator and the differ operators. These are majorly the mostly used operators to create a mono publisher. Okay, I hope the difference between these two is clear. Okay, with that, let's move on to the next one, which is from callable and from supplier. Basically, from the name you can understand what it is. The first one lets us create a mono publisher with the callable. Okay, and the second one, it lets us create a mono publisher with a supplier. Let's just see how how do we use this operator. So I'll call it from callable. Okay, give me a second. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll create a mono publisher, mono maybe string publisher equal to mono dot from callable, and it also expects a lambda function which is returning some value, so something, and we can, let me just copy that from here. We can do this, okay, and if we run this, obviously we should be getting the something in the on next response. So you can see, right, in on next we got something and then we got on complete. Similarly, from supplier also works. I'll just replace from callable with from supplier, and then I'll run this. It behaves the same way. Okay, we get the Onyx signal as something. So basically, if you are a Java person who knows the difference between what is a callable and what is a supplier, there is some difference, like in supplier the side effect cannot happen, it should just supply the value, whereas in callable some side effect can also happen. So that difference is there. If you come across a use case where you want to create a publisher from a callable or from a supplier, these operators are available and these can be used. Although most of the times you may not be needing them, but yeah, there might be some use case where these two operators might be required. So yeah, it's good to know about them. With those out of the way, let's move on to the next one, which is from Renable. And from Renable, basically we have to pass a lambda function. That function is basically the function that has to run as part of that Renable instance. So in Java, right, we create the Renable class which has the run method, and that run method does not return anything. It returns void, and you write whatever you want to do inside that method, inside that run method, and then you create a thread out of that Renable, and then you run the thread, and when you run the thread, that particular function gets executed. So it's kind of a similar thing. When you do MonoDoj from Renable, you just have to pass that function, that void function that has to run. Okay, so what that means is this mono publisher will not return any will not emit any value. It emits void. It does not emit anything, because we are creating it from a Renable instance which has a function which does not return anything. Yeah, so let's just see how that like how to create one, how to use this operator from Renable. Okay, so I'll do mono void, and right away do this publisher equal to MonoDoj from Renable, and we'll write a lambda function and we'll just print out something, Renable maybe, and then the same subscription, this thing. Okay, now if I run this, let's see what happens. Okay, so we got a Renable, but it is not a onNext signal, right? It did not, we did not get it as a value inside onNext. It just got executed, that's all. And then the onComplete was called. Okay, this being a void. What if we try to return something from this Renable? What happens then? So let's say we make it integer and then we return an integer. See, it is giving us an error. Expected void, but lambda body is neither statement nor expression. So it always expects that a void is returned from this particular publisher. Okay. Now again, if you come across a use case where you have to where you think that it makes sense to create a publisher from a Renable, then this operator is for you. You can use it to do that. Okay. Now let's move on to the next one, which is MonoDoj from. Now this is an interesting one. With MonoDoj from, you can create a mono from some other kind of publisher. Now that some other kind of publisher is Flux, right? Because there are only two kind of publishers in Spring WebFlux, right? So from a mono, if you want to create a, sorry, from a flux, if you want to create a mono, you can use this operator mono.from. You can create a mono out of a mono as well, but that does not make sense in most of the cases. You might not be using it. If you already have a mono, why would you create a mono out of a mono, right? But yeah, there might be some scenario where you want to do, where you may want to do that. Yeah, we never know. Okay, so let's just see how. For now, what we'll do is we'll create a mono out of a flux. Okay, uh, let's see how we do that. Let's write a test from. Okay, what I'll do, I'll first of all I'll create a mono string, or maybe let me keep it integer, publisher equal to mono.from. I'll create a flux operator 1 2 3. I'll create a flux publisher, sorry. Now in flux also there is this just operator. When we get to flux, we'll again talk about it, but it is similar to how mono is, how mono.just is. Flux.just, if you give multiple values, it will emit one value at a time on subscription. So multiple on next signals with values 1 2 3, and then an on complete signal. Okay. So here what we are trying to do, we are trying to create a mono publisher out of a flux publisher which is emitting the values 1 2 3. Okay. Let's subscribe to this and let's see what we get. All right, just run this, and we can see we got only one on next signal with value 1 and directly on complete. So what that means is the from operator, what it does, if you provide a flux publisher to it, it will just consider the first value. It will just consider the first value that should be emitted by the publisher that it is creating. Okay, by the mono publisher that it is creating. So here 1 2 3 1 being the first value, it created a publisher, it created a mono publisher that emits only the value 1. Okay, it just discarded 2 and 3. So that's how you can create a mono publisher out of a flux. But here you can see we are like there is a loss of data, like 2 and 3 is getting lost, and we are just considering 1. So again, it has to be a very specific use case where there is a flux operator. So maybe you have a flux operator, like operator of type flux, which is generating only a single value, and you want to convert it into a mono, then it would make sense to use this operator. Apart from that, I cannot think of a use case for this particular operator where you are okay with the loss of data. Okay, so yeah, it's just good to know about key. There is this operator mono.from, which lets us convert a flux into a mono. Okay, so that's about it. The next one is empty. Okay, so as we said in the previous video as well, a mono publisher can emit at most a single value and at least 0 values. So if you want a publisher which is emitting nothing, like 0 value, then mono.empty is for you. Okay, it just emits the on complete signal right away. There is no on next at all. Okay, so you might have guessed it how it works, but anyways I'll just show through test. Okay, let me create this test with empty, and let me do this, and let's run this. We expect only on complete should be printed. Yeah, and that's what that happens, right? So that's how the mono.empty operator lets us create a mono publisher which is not emitting anything. Okay, directly gives a on complete signal. Yeah, so that's about it. These are the operators with which you'll be mostly using to create a mono publisher, and majorly just differ and empty. These are majorly used operators. You should know the difference between just and differ. That was the it's very crucial to know the difference between those two. and rest all are simple operators which lets us create the mono publisher. So yeah, that's about it. In the next video we'll be learning about the transformation, the operators that lets us to lets us transform the data that is emitted by a mono. So if you want to do something in between, you want to transform the data, you want to filter the data, etc, etc, uh, we'll be learning about those operators in the upcoming video. Yeah. So thanks for watching this video and stay tuned for the next one. Yeah. Bye.